Um, I guess what I'm asking is, could somebody could somebody use your reason to come to a false conclusion?
Don't know. To be honest, I don't know.
Okay. Is it okay if I record?
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for stopping.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get this
I'm kind
camera
of
going
bored
here.
anyway, so.
What's that?
I said I'm kind of bored anyway,
Bored?
so.
Just out walking around.
Yep.
You want to give your name?
Sure. My name is Jeff.
I normally leave out the last name.
Sure.
Unless you want to promote yourself. For some
No.
reason.
I have no dreams of grandeur.
Okay. So, Jeff.
Yes.
Okay.
So feel free to edit that out.
Yeah, I will. Awesome. And is
Or even just aliens in general. I could go either way. I mean, they're kind of sort of the same thing, I guess.
I think it seems like it would be more of a big deal if they had, because you said earlier you wanted to explore aliens have been to Earth,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
And I think, I don't know, maybe you can tell me how you feel about this, but I think it would be a bigger deal if they had been to Earth rather than just existing somewhere in the universe. But
They definitely been to Earth, yeah.
okay, so yeah, that seems pretty specific. So
Mhm.
okay, so JEFF, right?
Yes.
Aliens have visited Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the main reason that supports your confidence that aliens have visited Earth?
My main people have seen the old movie 2001 Space Odyssey, which sort of gave a parable of, the monkeys basically went from beating the earth with sticks and stones to suddenly, the monolith appears, and then all of a sudden now they're basically using those sticks as weapons and things like that. And of course, in the next scene of, they're up in space and stuff like that. So the parable, or the way how that plays out is, I mean, if you stop and think, everybody talks about what they refer to as the missing link. In other words, you had man, which existed in tribes, not fully upright, things like that. And then all of a sudden, there's the missing link, and all of a sudden, the next thing is you've got Cro-Magnon, which is upright, individual, weapons, things like that. So there starts out with that. One friend of mine in college, we had a discussion about this once, and this kind of falls into a little bit of, I don't know if you may want to edit this part out or not, because it's
Well,
depending on a person's religious background. Because if you take the Bible not as literally as it is with the Garden of Eden, so you had Adam, and then Eve was created from Adam, and then you have the apple on the tree of knowledge, And so if you take it not as literally as the Bible does, but let's say, for example, the Garden of Eden was actually a laboratory.
Okay.
And so it's a lab rather than this mystical, Garden of Eden thing. And the apple on the tree of knowledge is a once you have taken that, you have achieved a level of knowledge that you no longer need to be in the laboratory. You are now free to go. So rather than taking the Bible's extremely literal piece of you are not supposed to touch that, and the moment you touch that you get kicked out. If you take it a little less literal and say it is you have now achieved a level of knowledge that you don't need to be here anymore, and we're released rather than kicked out.
That's that link that you're talking about?
Well, no, I mean that's part of the comparison I gave with the 2000 Space Odyssey,
Okay.
where all of a sudden something occurred that caused a change of intelligence. Same thing, potentially, is that we were potentially raised, grown, whatever word you want to use here for on the earth, and then once we were ready to go, then we were released, and that ready to go was the in the Bible it was the poison, was the apple which you were told not to touch. But if you take it less biblically, it could also be it could also be a you've now we have now retained, or we have now achieved a state of knowledge, consciousness, whatever, that now we can be released into through it into the world.
Okay. So, what I'm hearing is that the main reason that you're convinced aliens have visited Earth is because we have stories that explain the evolution of man and the step that we took
Hmm.
as far in terms of change of intelligence.
That's part of it, but that is a small piece of what I can go into, because see, I actually studied all this stuff. And so, down just to give you some examples, like for example, down in South America, the Incas. I actually lived down in South America for, geez, about a year as a foreign exchange student.
Cool.
So I mean, so down there, there was the Inca temples were always in these layers like this, and at the bottom was these square, tight-fitting stones. Um, and then above that, they became more oblong, but still tight-fitting. And then above that, it became this more loose rock that they kind of hammered in place. So you could see that there was either a knowledge or a technology there then, because see, we can't even duplicate that technology today. I'm actually one of the few people who, because this was back in the this like the early 70s, when we were actually taken by the locals to one of the mines where these stones came from. I mean, literally, here's this big wall of rock, and you could literally see where they were cut right out. So I mean, it's cut, cut, cut. Now we can duplicate the accuracy of the cuts with laser, but how the hell did they cut the piece behind? Because I mean, there was literally blocks sitting on the ground that if you were strong enough, you could have picked one of those things up and stuck it right back into that hole where it was cut out of. We don't even have the technology today to do that.
Okay. Uh, so I'm hearing a second reason, and that second reason is because there's evidence of ancient technology.
Correct.
Okay. So which reason holds the most weight? Um, let me ask another question real
Sure.
quick, just to make sure. How, from a scale from 0 to 100,
Okay.
how confident are that aliens have visited Earth?
100.
100?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's too much evidence of it. Just to give you another example, down in Bogota, Colombia, there's a museum there. It's pre-Columbian art. In that museum is a glass depiction of a Delta Wing fighter with a person flying it, and I mean an actual scale Delta Wing fighter. And we're talking a culture that existed pre-Christ, and how would they have come up with that? And then if you carry that on, there are so many other
Yeah, I don't think Tom Cruise was alive back then.
no. And then there are so many other pieces of art that depict aliens like that with helmets and things like that. There, I mean, it's kind of like UFOs. You know, we like to the government likes to dismiss them as, you know, weather balloons or swamp gas or whatever excuse that there is. But there is just such an incredible volume of them that you can't dismiss all of it.
Okay.
And so basically, so there's, you know, yet another example of many of something that
Of
was complete.
evidence that
Yeah,
demonstrates ancient tech.
yeah.
Okay.
And then if you go even beyond that, in La Paz, Bolivia, there is a temple there. It's called Tiahuanaco. It existed, as I recall, off the top of my head, 14,000 years BC, and there's a subterranean museum there that depicts every major race on the planet. Now remember, this is a culture that existed 14,000 years BC, and yet it's got head depictions carved out of every major race on the planet.
Okay. I'm interested in the piece of evidence that supports your confidence the most.
Hmm.
In other words, the piece of evidence that if we somehow figured out that it wasn't true or wasn't the case or wasn't reliable evidence would cause your confidence in aliens have visited Earth to drop the most.
I suppose I could probably maybe step back just a hair and say maybe it's potentially less of a aliens visited versus there was evidence of technology that we don't even have today.
Okay.
Now whether that technology came from aliens or whether it came from, I mean, the question comes is saying, okay, if there was technologies that existed back then, how is that, how did, what happened to them and where did they come from?
Okay.
Because there's no evidence that those cultures that existed had the knowledge to come up with anything like that. They were not industrial. They were not, um, you know, they didn't have machines and you know, manufacturing capabilities and things like that. So where did it come from?
Got it. And so how confident are you that ancient tech has anything to do with aliens?
I would say probably about 80, just merely because it it doesn't balance up, because the culture that existed versus the technology that was had then, they don't match up. It would be like our technology today if we had warp drives, you know,
Okay.
able to go through wormholes, because we don't have the technology yet to do anything like that. So all of a sudden, if all of a sudden, you know, tomorrow we started, you know, going through wormholes into other pieces of space, where did the technology come from? Because it's outside of our knowledge and abilities today.
Okay. So we're changing the conclusion from aliens have visited Earth to ancient tech demonstrates aliens have visited Earth, and you're 80% about that?
I would say so, yeah, because it doesn't match up. Where did the technology come from? Because the people were here, but the technology is like way up here. So it doesn't match. How do you balance that? Something brought that technology, and it was not, those people did not develop that technology themselves. So where
Okay.
did it come from?
If if we somehow found out that there's like an explanation for the ancient tech um, that isn't the explanation you think it is, what would that do to your confidence about aliens have visited Earth?
I would say that it would change that,
It'd go
but I
from
still
100
believe
to what?
that probably down to 50, I guess.
Okay. Okay.
Because
Okay.
to be honest, I don't think you would ever find anything like that.
Yeah,
Because
it's a hypothetical.
yeah,
So so if we had like if this is another hypothetical, or I guess I'm restating it. If hypothetically we found out that um, the ancient tech was were all hoaxes, your confidence in aliens have visited Earth would go down to 50.
if we found that it was a hoax,
That all of the ancient tech stories were hoaxes. I'm
well,
not
I
saying
mean,
that
I've
that's the
seen it.
case.
It's not a. I mean, I've literally seen this
It's a
stuff.
hypothetical.
Oh,
So we have
okay.
to pretend
Oh, okay. I
that
got it.
if we found out tomorrow
Hmm.
that all of the ancient tech was actually hoaxes, that would cause you to drop your confidence that aliens have visited Earth from 100 to 50.
I would say that, yeah, because I still think they've been here anyways.
Okay.
Just from the simple aspect of the size of the universe itself. We can't be the only the only smart people around,
Okay.
even just from that aspect alone.
Does the size of the universe have anything to do with the likelihood that they've been here on Earth?
I would say, I mean, we have already visited other planets ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now granted, the only one we put our feet on is the moon so far. But I mean, with the technology that we have today, so if you assume that, given the size of the universe, somebody would have to have, beyond speed of light travel, whether it be wormholes, whatever.
Uh-huh.
They would have to have, faster than light technology. That's going to be one pretty smart group of people. So you would assume that they would go out and check on, other planets to see where they're at. Because I mean, we've already got a lot of evidence, I guess would be the right word to say. Because I mean, a lot of what we considered science fiction, many years ago has actually become, truth today. So it kind of goes to say a little bit, that maybe the Gene Roddenberry or some of the other people have talked about, the what was it, the number one rule for Star Trek is, don't mess with the people that, what was that, what was, oh, the I can't remember what they call it anymore, but it was the number one rule that, if it's a race that's that's not ready to join the union or something like that, that was like, you can't touch them. They can't even know that you were ever there,
Oh.
because they don't want them to know that technology even exists.
Okay. Okay. Um,
Plus,
no,
if you couple that with all the UFO sightings, you can't tell commercial pilots that, they say now you could possibly make an argument in saying that it's advanced, warfare technology that some people have seen. I mean, myself, I've actually seen a UFO before, and I didn't even know it was at the time. It was really weird. It was actually New Year's Eve when I was in Japan. We were up on top of one of the buildings there in Hiroshima for New Year's Eve, and we looked up above us, and there was this. Now I couldn't exactly see the dome type shape, but it had lights going around like this, and it was kind of sitting here doing like you would pivot something on a point, and it was going like that, so the lights would be pivoting around like that.
mhm.
And we thought at first that it was just a somebody's remote control toy, because it was altitude up there. It was a good
Like a drone or something?
there was no drones back then per
Oh,
se, but I
got it.
mean, somebody's remote control toy anyways, is
Uh-huh.
what we thought. And then, was sitting there doing its thing, and all of a sudden it stopped, and it just went straight up. I mean, it was gone in less than a second. Because it sat there, and then it stopped pivoting and sat in one spot, and then just went straight up. And it was gone. I mean, in like less than a second, it was gone. We don't have anything like that.
Okay. Ancient tech demonstrates aliens were here, and you're 80% confident in that.
Yep.
And the main reason is because the size of the universe, right? That's the reason that supports your confidence the most?
That's a piece of it. I still think it's the technology itself not being in sync with the races at the time. is another one that strongly supports that.
Okay. The fact that, okay, so the tech itself is the main reason.
I would say that's probably the main reason. I would say is because the technology we don't have today, and these were cultures that didn't have even the industry and the capabilities that we have today. So it wasn't in sync with it. So you have to ask the question, where did it come from? And then if you couple that with the like that Delta fighter one, for example,
Yeah.
there's Indian paintings depicting things, devices in flight with somebody piloting it. Um, lots of stuff like that. And then, of course, as I mentioned, Tiwanaku, that race having the knowledge of stuff. We actually saw, also, if you take the plains of Nazca in Chile, the designs and stuff that are on the ground that can only be viewed from many thousands of feet up in the air is actually a completed image. That's sort of another piece that falls into that as well.
Okay. Let me see if I can summarize this real quick. Um, you're 100% confident that aliens have visited Earth.
Yep,
And the main reason for that is the ancient tech.
I would say that, yes.
And that supports 80% of your 100% confidence?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And if we found out that the ancient tech were all hoaxes, that would drop your confidence down to 50.
Down to 50.
Okay. How much does this conclusion, aliens have visited Earth,
Okay.
how much does that affect your behavior?
None.
Okay.
I mean, all it means is it's somebody that's smarter than us. I mean, there's the old stories about the Roswell, space landing, and they've got, pieces of technology in Area 51 and stuff like that. Um, if you assume any of that is even true, then there's technology that again we don't have today.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there any way to find out if this was false, that aliens have visited Earth? Is there a way to tell if that statement was not true?
I would say you would have to. There's a whole lot of a lot of individual things that you would have to explain away before that conclusion would be invalid. Because
Do you have an example of how we could find out if this was false?
well, I mean, you'd have to, just the examples that I gave you, you would have to explain those away. You'd have to explain away, okay, how is that rock mined and pull out? How is a race that existed 14,000 years BC had a knowledge of every major race on the planet? You'd have to explain away how would a pre-Columbian culture even remotely understand what a delta wing fighter was, and somebody piloting it.
Can I ask about the Delta Wing fighter?
Sure.
Okay, so what is the second best explanation for the Delta Wing fighter situation?
I don't think there is one, because I mean you can't. Again, you've got a race that was down here with a technology here, and the concept of air flight, aerodynamics, piloting, manufacturing, all of that. Where the heck did all that come from?
So you're not able to come up with a secondary explanation for that.
No.
Can you imagine one? Like, even if it's not not pun intended, out of this, like an out of this world explanation?
I mean, I suppose, I mean, if you went that, maybe there was some artist that was just, way beyond his time and had even the idea in his head that, humans could fly.
Mm-hmm.
That would be probably the only thing that I could even remotely think of, is somebody that was just, so completely, future sighted that already, that could think in their head about the concept that man could actually fly.
Mm-hmm.
And then what it would take to fly. But see, the thing that counters that one, though, is even if by argument's sake, let's assume that there was some really far-sighted artist that could think of the concept that, back in a thousand, several thousand years ago, more than several thousand years ago, man could fly, you would think that that person would pattern that off of animals because it's the only example that they have of flight.
Hmm.
So rather than a
Like birds and stuff.
rather than a delta wing, it would be something patterned off of an animal.
Hmm.
So it's out of character that somebody could be not only so farsighted enough to think of the concept of humans flying, but not only that, but something that's not even within their mentality at all. I mean, because a delta wing fighter is a pretty advanced design.
Yeah. Is there anything that would cause you to raise your confidence in this conclusion that aliens have visited Earth? Even though you're 100, is there anything that you don't know today that you could learn to make your confidence go up?
I think it would be interesting to have the government open up more about the advanced technology stuff. Because if by some happen chance that let's say for argument's sake that the Roswell was for real and they actually, have some working technology from the Roswell crash, it would be nice to, know, okay, there really is, anti-gravity type devices or, things like that, or faster than light, things like that.
Okay.
That would be intriguing to know. If the government opened up about that rather than hiding it all.
So if you were to be able to take a trip down to Nevada, Area 51 or whatever, right?
Right.
That's where it is, right?
There,
Nevada?
Yeah. Yes.
And they open the doors and they're like, check out this
So come on
technology,
in.
and
Yeah.
you're able to kind of witness kind of anti-gravity,
Mm-hmm.
things going on. That would cause you to raise your confidence?
Yeah.
Okay. And what would lower it would be if you found out explanations for the evidence of the ancient tech. That would
Yes.
make you lower your
Right.
confidence? Okay.
Although I find that so far and highly unlikely.
Sure, yeah.
But that would, yeah. If something that, because you could see back then that it was a technology that was going away, because in the beginning there was the square tight fitting stones, and then later on there was the more rounded shapes and stuff like that, but still that real tight fitting stones. And then above that was the Inca stuff, which is these loose stones piled up, and then they would hammer rock into it to kind of wedge it in and tighten it up.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But you always found the square tight fitting stones in the priest quarters areas, because like in Machu Picchu, for example, the priest areas has the square tight fitting stones. Throughout Cusco, like when they took down a lot of the stuff, because when the Catholics came in and whatnot, they would build churches on top of the square tight fitting stones.
Okay. Got it.
And then there's actually even evidence of potentially nuclear fusion down in Cusco. Outside of Cusco, Peru, there's a Inca fortress called Sacsayhuaman, and outside of that there are, and I always get stalactites and stalagmites mixed up. So when it's coming from the ceiling, is that a stalagmite or a stalactite? I can never.
I don't remember, but I'm leaning towards the ceiling ones being stalactites.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say, for argument's sake, that's it, because I never remember it. But there's actually an area where the rock is melted to glass, and the cracks in between the rock there, you can actually literally walk in there, and the rock is melted into those stalactites, stalagmites. It's really cool.
That's from the nuclear fusion?
That's the guy that I talked to at the time said that was one of the few sources of heat enough to melt that granite like that.
Oh, okay.
Was nuclear fusion.
Could somebody use the reason of ancient tech to come to a false conclusion?
I suppose if you thought about it, you could say that ancient tech, the false conclusion would be that, I don't know, I guess it was that somehow or another, by some ways that we'll never really understand, they were able to create that technology that allowed them to do those things. And then that technology, actually did just wear out. That's probably, I guess, about the only thing that kind of immediately comes to my head.
Would you consider aliens supernatural?
No.
Okay. Could
Supernatural generally has a religious component to it of some sort.
okay. Could somebody use the reason ancient tech to support the to support the idea that the supernatural was involved?
Well, I mean, I guess some people use supernatural in the aspect of it being unexplainable.
Mhm.
Like let's say, for example, a ghost or something is able to walk through a wall or something like that, so
Uh-huh.
therefore it's supernatural. But in some of our science fiction pieces and things like that, they talk about technology that allows them to literally walk right through a wall.
Uh-huh. Okay. Um, I guess what I'm asking is, could somebody could somebody use your reason to come to a false conclusion?
Don't know, to be honest. I don't know.
Okay. Do you think it's important to be able to tell if you were mistaken?
Well, I mean, everybody has to be willing to admit that they're wrong.
Okay.
I mean, if, like you're saying, if there was suddenly, somebody was to come up with some evidence of one of those early cultures having that technology in the industry and everything else behind it, suddenly dig it up and say, okay, well, we found, silicon chips, or manufacturing facility left, what's left of it, things like that, then you would have to begin to rethink that.
Okay. So when you say you're 100% confident, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're
Means I have absolutely no doubt that aliens have visited the Earth.
okay, but you're open to being mistaken about it?
Say again?
Are you open to being mistaken about it?
Oh, of course, everybody. I mean,
Okay.
you're a
Okay.
fool if you're not willing to admit you're wrong.
Okay.
I
Cool.
find it highly unlikely, but because there's just too much evidence to the contrary. But again, I mean, if somebody was able to take, because I mean, I've got more things I could say besides all of that. And if somebody's able to, basically, explain away each and every one of those, then I would have to accept the fact that, okay, that's my premise, or my premise, and the technology that was there and shown and used at the time was not in sync with the the knowledge and the capabilities of the race at the time. Then I would have to accept that.
Okay.
I find it extremely highly unlikely, but it's possible. So I mean, I couldn't say 100%, I am right, end of story, because nobody can be 100% right.
You're you're at an open-minded 100%.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said that you don't know if somebody could use your reasons to arrive at a false conclusion.
Yeah, I can't
Let
even.
let's for a second, let's pretend that somebody could use those reasons to arrive at a conclusion you think is false.
But I don't know what the conclusion could be.
Right,
from
right. I
that,
don't
though,
either.
so.
Let's say that they could use those reasons to arrive at a false conclusion. Would it be wise to be at 100% confidence if somebody could use those reasons to come to a false conclusion?
I don't know. I mean, it's sort of the old, the artist or the author or the person that creates something, conundrum. Conundrum is somebody can take my creation and use it in a way that I didn't expect them to do, or maybe didn't even want them to do. Because
Mm-hmm.
how many people have developed weapons that basically wish they never had,
Yeah.
and things like that. So
Yeah. Or like the internet, it can be used
they're used for good and
for
bad.
good and bad. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks, Jeff. Do you have any questions?
No, not really.
Okay. Cool.
It
Well,
was
thanks.
interesting.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping.
Yeah.
Do you go on YouTube often?
Not real. I mean, I do sometimes.
Okay.
It really just kind of depends. What's your YouTube channel?
Do you have a phone with you?
You can just tell me what it is. I'll
It's
find it.
okay. It's called Sound Epistemology.
Sound what?
Sound Epistemology.
Huh. Okay.
Sound like the Puget Sound.
Yep. Epistemiology.
Yeah. Do you know what epistemology is?
No.
It's the study of knowledge, how we come to know
okay.
things. So that's my YouTube channel.
Interesting.
It's really coming down. Do you have something in mind?
Yeah, you'll probably find 50 or 60 interviews like this on there already. A lot of them are in real life like this, and there's also some that are audio only. So yeah, hope to see you on there.
Yeah, I know. I have friends of mine that do editing and stuff like that. The video editing, that's quite an art form.
That's my favorite part of the whole process.
Yeah, I mean I know I do a lot of off-roading with my off-road machines, and some people carry cameras and videotape everything, but geez, it takes them like hours to edit transitions and then adding soundtracks in and all of that stuff. That's a lot of work.
Enjoying that work is, I think, important if you're going to spend that much time doing
Sort
it.
of a labor of love, I
Yeah,
guess.
exactly. Yeah. Cool.
Because it's a lot of work to do that.
Right on. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, no worries.
See if I can get some more interviews here.
Yep, no problem.
And yeah, if you see me again sometime, feel free to.
I don't get down here too often. I used to come down here and dive all the time.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I know the water out here like the back of my hand.
Yeah, do you ever dive in Hood Canal?
Oh, of course.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty popular spot for that too.
Unfortunately, I caught COVID in September,
Oh, you
and
did?
it ruined my lungs.
Oh no.
Yeah, it really sucks because I mean I was in almost Olympic athlete condition back then. I mean, I used to work out an hour and a half a day, 4 days a week. Part of my workout was doing 8 flights of stairs with 185 pounds of lead on.
Wow.
But then I lost 25 pounds of muscle in the hospital and damn near died.
Mm. Well, I'm glad you're doing better.
Well, better so to speak. My lungs are still wasted, but
Yeah. Well,
they
I'm
told
glad
me-
you're able to be out and about,
Oh,
even
yeah.
in this
Well, I
kind
mean,
of.
when they told me I was going to be on O2 for the rest of my life. Never tell a former recon Marine that. I'll do whatever it is I can to prove you wrong.
All right.
All right, man.
Take
Take care
care.
of yourself.
See you later.